There is always some madness in love, but there is also always some reason in madness. Friedrich Nietzsche. Women don't chase randomly. They pursue selectively, and only when a certain psychological formula is triggered. Most men spend their lives trying to earn a woman's attention, never realizing the more they chase, the more invisible they become. But Nietzsche, the philosopher who understood desire not as affection, but as power and tension, left behind a blueprint, a dark game of magnetism, a paradox, a reversal. The very act of not pursuing becomes the bait. This is not about manipulation, it's about understanding. When you grasp the hidden mechanisms of attraction, the game changes. You become the magnet. You no longer dance for her approval. She dances around your silence, your stillness, your mystery. Nietzsche didn't believe in love as a surrender. He believed in it as a battlefield, a place where instincts, power, and hierarchy collide. In his words, love is the state in which man sees things most decidedly as they are not. And the man who understands this controls the illusion. In this video, we will decode the 7 psychological mind games, rooted in Nietzschean philosophy, that flip the script, disarm female defenses, and make a woman pursue you with obsession. Not once, but non-stop. Let's begin. Part 1. The Power of Absence, Nietzsche's first rule of desire. Nietzsche once said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." And in the game of love, the most powerful thread is not presence, but absence. In today's hyperconnected world, most men are always available, always texting, always explaining, always trying. But Nietzsche teaches that the one who withholds, the one who vanishes just enough, triggers in the feminine psyche a primal response, curiosity, insecurity, and eventually, obsession. Why? Because absence creates space for imagination. And imagination is where female desire explodes. A man who is always visible becomes ordinary, predictable, safe. But a man who disappears like a question mark, not in desperation, but in power, becomes a mystery she can't resolve. This isn't ghosting. It's strategic withdrawal. It's not about ignoring her completely. It's about not giving everything away. Nietzsche believed that tension sustains desire. And when you remove yourself just enough, she feels the pull. Not from you, but from within herself. The more a woman fills in the blanks about you, the more she projects her own desires onto you. She builds a fantasy in your absence, a fantasy she will chase. Here's what you must remember. The modern man confuses attention with affection. He thinks being always there will make her stay. But in truth, being always there removes the reason to chase. You become expected, not exciting. Nietzsche's mind game here is simple but brutal. Create space. Let her wonder. Let her worry. And in that psychological space, she will build a version of you worth chasing. When you are scarce, her mind does the work for you. She begins to ask, where did he go? And more dangerously, who is he with? You've now entered her mind without touching her. That is Nietzschean seduction. You become her obsession not by moving closer, but by moving away. Part 2. The mirror game, reflecting her ego until she craves you. Nietzsche warned of ego not as a flaw, but as an engine, the invisible force that governs how people relate to themselves and others. He understood that love, especially feminine love, is often a mirror. A woman doesn't fall for you directly. She falls for the version of herself she sees reflected in your eyes. Here's the mistake men make. They show their cards too early. They confess. They worship. They reveal everything. But Nietzsche teaches the opposite. To make her chase, you must become a mirror that reflects only the parts of her she wants. To believe are true, but not completely. Let me explain. Every woman secretly desires validation, but not too much. She wants to feel seen, but not exposed. She wants a man who sees her uniqueness, but still makes her earn his full approval. When you mirror her strengths, her intelligence, beauty, energy, without collapsing into worship, she begins to crave more of your gaze. Why? Because she becomes addicted to the way she feels about herself when she's around you. That's the real drug. Not you, but her own reflection, filtered through your eyes. Nietzsche wrote, "Whenever I climb, I am followed by a dog called ego." In attraction, ego follows everything. The secret to this mind game is calibrated reflection. When you amplify her best self, but remain slightly out of reach, she becomes hooked on the version of herself you awaken. You are not chasing her. You're offering a mirror. And every woman chases the man who reflects her in the light she most desires, but only partially. She must come closer to see the full image. And in that pursuit, she falls deeper. Here's how you do it in practice. Compliment not what every man sees, but what she secretly values. Challenge her just enough to make her prove herself. Withdraw attention when she expects it, and return it unpredictably. This unpredictability doesn't repel her. It makes her doubt her own control. And when a woman doubts her power over you, she tries harder to get it back. Nietzsche's brilliance is in exposing this truth. A love is never about seeing the other clearly. It's about seeing ourselves through the other. Be the mirror, but don't give her the full image. Let her chase her reflection. Inside you. Part 3. The Law of Controlled Chaos. Nietzsche's secret of emotional tension. Nietzsche once said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." But what does that mean when it comes to women? To desire? To pursuit? Modern men believe that the key to winning a woman's heart lies in stability, in being calm, collected, and constantly agreeable. But Nietzsche's insight reveals the opposite. Women don't fall for perfection. They fall for emotional tension, a carefully orchestrated instability, a dance between unpredictability and control. This is controlled chaos, the subtle art of being intense but reserved, provocative but grounded, unpredictable yet intentional. You become the man she cannot categorize, and because she cannot define you, she cannot forget you. Why does this work? Because the female psyche is emotionally associative. It links intensity with significance. If a man triggers strong emotional fluctuations, highs and lows, doubts and validations, he begins to feel important to her inner world, even if logically she doesn't understand why. Let's break this down. When you're always nice, consistent, and emotionally safe, you produce comfort, but not passion. You feel like a brother, a therapist, a background character. But when you inject controlled chaos into your presence, when your energy is unsettling in just the right way, she begins to anticipate you, obsess over your next move. She doesn't just like you, she feels you. Nietzsche believed that all creation, all desire, is born out of internal contradiction, a kind of sacred turbulence. In the context of attraction, this means you must disrupt her expectations. How? Say something wildly profound and then go silent for days. Compliment her mind but criticize her behavior. Be emotionally open, then become completely unreadable. This is not cruelty. It's volatility with intention. It's the opposite of neediness. Controlled chaos makes her question her own control. And a woman who doubts her emotional dominance will subconsciously pursue the man who triggered that doubt. The truth is, a woman will often test a man just to see if he can emotionally lead. If he collapses under pressure, she loses interest. But if he remains unpredictable without being erratic, if he creates fire without burning the house down, she's pulled deeper. Nietzsche understood that tension is the gateway to transformation. In love, this transformation happens when a man becomes a mirror and a storm, the paradox she can't resist, the contradiction that awakens her. So remember this mind game. Do not try to be her peace. Be her fire, her question, her contradiction, and watch her chase the man who makes her feel alive. Part 4. The Art of Strategic Rejection, Nietzsche's Law of Unworthiness. Nietzsche's world is not one of sentimental illusions, it's one of harsh awakenings. He believed that people value what they cannot easily possess. And in love, the same rule applies. He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. Nietzsche. What does this mean in attraction? It means that even when a woman feels rejected, she still respects the one who rejected her, as long as that rejection wasn't born from insecurity, but from power. This is the art of strategic rejection. You don't always say yes. You don't always agree. You don't always allow access to yourself. You become a man with conditions, standards, and the strength to walk away. This isn't about being cold. It's about being unavailable in the right way. A man who can say no, calmly, confidently, without drama, immediately becomes desirable. Because his rejection implies something far more powerful, he doesn't need her. And that is rare. Most men chase, validate, overgive. They crumble under female attention, believing that any interest is a prize. But Nietzsche would call this slave morality, a mindset of submission to external approval. He would urge you to cultivate master morality, to become the creator of your own value, independent of others' validation. When you say no to her request for your time, when you don't reply to that message instantly, when you pull away when disrespected, you communicate not rejection for rejection's sake, but that your energy is not cheap. And here's the psychological twist. When you reject her in a way that honors yourself, she begins to assign value to your presence. It's a paradox. The more often you say yes to everything she wants, the less she values it. But the moment you withdraw, strategically, silently, with dignity, she begins to notice your absence like a wound. Nietzsche teaches us that power isn't force, it's restraint. It's having the strength to act, but choosing when. And in seduction, that when must be intentional. So what does strategic rejection look like? Turning down an invitation when she expects eagerness. Saying, "I don't think that works for me," instead of blindly agreeing. Remaining emotionally calm when she tests or provokes you. Rejection becomes seductive when it's delivered with unapologetic self-respect. Because women don't want men who are endlessly nice. They want men who have the courage to be rare. And in a world of constant validation and male desperation, rejection, delivered artfully, becomes the ultimate aphrodisiac. Part 5. The Cold Seducer, Nietzsche's masculine ideal. Nietzsche was not a man of warmth. His philosophy was forged in solitude, shaped by suffering, and sharpened by truth. And within this brutal honesty, he outlined the image of the cold seducer, a man not heartless, but internally sovereign. This is the man who makes women pursue without lifting a finger. The man who has walked through emotional fire and emerged indifferent, not because he cannot feel, but because he has mastered his feelings. This is the Nietzschean masculine ideal, a man who does not chase, because he is the prize, a man who does not explain, because he lives by his own truth, a man who is silent, because he is whole within. Women today are surrounded by men who overshare, overexpress, overpromise. But when a woman meets a man who is mysterious, emotionally self-contained, and slightly unreachable, her desire is ignited. Why? Because she wants to solve him, conquer him, understand the story behind his silence. She feels drawn to the unknown. And the cold seducer is the embodiment of the unknown, with eyes that have seen too much, and a heart that doesn't beg. Here's what makes this work. He observes more than he speaks. He listens, but doesn't reveal. He responds, but never overreacts. This presence, heavy, composed, unshaken, drives women wild, because they feel like they're standing in front of a locked vault. They want to be the one who unlocks it. Nietzsche believed that greatness is born in solitude, and the cold seducer has walked alone. He doesn't fear her loss because he has faced deeper losses. He doesn't crave her attention because he is self-sufficient. This is what separates him. His value doesn't rise or fall based on whether she stays. And paradoxically, that's exactly why she stays. In Nietzsche's words, the man of knowledge must be able not only to love his enemies, but also to hate his friends. Translated to the world of attraction, this means you must be willing to lose even what you love, if it threatens your inner power. That's the cold seducer. Not cruel, not manipulative, but untouchable. He doesn't beg. He doesn't chase. He simply is. And because of that, women chase what they can't possess. Part 6. The Reflection and Withdrawal Game, Nietzsche's Dance of Desire. Nietzsche once said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." In the realm of desire, this becomes a haunting truth, because the moment a woman begins to gaze into you, into your silence, your mystery, your composed attachment, she's no longer just observing. She's reflecting. She starts seeing herself in your absence. And that is the trigger. This is the reflection and withdrawal game, a mind game that Nietzsche never directly named, but one his entire worldview implies. It begins when you offer just enough of yourself for her to feel something, a connection, a spark, a glance of intensity, and then you withdraw, not because you're scared, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you are demonstrating one of the most Nietzschean traits of all, self-command. Here's the psychology. When you retreat after connecting, you don't vanish. You remain in her mind. You've lit the fire, then removed the oxygen, and now she's gasping. Not for air, but for you. This is not manipulation. It's discipline. Nietzsche taught that power doesn't lie in domination, but in restraint. And withdrawal is the highest form of restraint, because it is the opposite of the masculine urge to fix, to chase, to prove. Men who master this understand that female desire builds in delay, not in saturation. If you are always there, always giving, always opening up, you remove the mirror. But if you give only glimpses of thought, emotion, depth, she begins to project her fantasy onto you. She fills in the gaps. Here's how the game works. 1. Create connection, brief, intense, and sincere. 2. Pull back, physically, emotionally, or socially. 3. Let her wonder, give her silence, not explanation. 4. Let her chase, not because she's manipulated, but because she's emotionally activated. The more she invests emotionally, the deeper her attachment grows. Because as Nietzsche reveals, what we suffer for, we love more. And women, consciously or unconsciously, fall for the men who awaken emotional complexity within them. When you master reflection and withdrawal, you become her abyss, the space where she goes to feel her own desire, her own longing, and her own vulnerability. And she will pursue you, not just to reach you, but to reach the version of herself that only appears in your absence. Part 7. The final trigger, make her doubt her power. The most dangerous man is not the one who seeks to dominate a woman, but the one who makes her question her own dominance. Nietzsche never romanticized women. In fact, he often revealed their instincts with brutal clarity. But one insight stands out for the purpose of seduction. Women fall hardest for the men they cannot control. Not the kind of control that's loud or aggressive, but the psychological power, her ability to influence, shake, and alter you. When she realizes her charm isn't working, when she senses that you're immune to her usual weapons, that's when she begins to feel emotionally unarmed. And this is the final trigger. When a woman feels like her beauty, her flirting, her testing no longer penetrate you, she doesn't walk away. She escalates. She becomes invested, because now it's personal. This is not about being cold. It's about being unshakable. Nietzsche's philosophy teaches that strength isn't just physical, it's the spiritual power of not needing to be affirmed by others. When you embody this energy, you strip her of predictability. She no longer knows how to play you. You've short-circuited her strategies. Here's what happens psychologically. She doubts her power over you. That doubt leads to insecurity. That insecurity transforms into pursuit, not because you made her feel small, but because you made her feel challenged. Think of it this way. When a woman knows she has you, she relaxes. When a woman thinks she almost has you, she intensifies. The man who triggers that gray zone, that I almost have him, but not quite, becomes the object of relentless focus. Nietzsche would call this the will to power in reverse. She begins to pursue not for love alone, but for self-restoration, to regain her sense of influence. But you must do one thing: never explain yourself. Never collapse into defense. Never reveal your inner storm. Remain stoic, controlled, a little amused, and above all, silent in the face of pressure. Because a man who is silent when tested, a man who does not flinch when seduced, a man who does not tremble when adored, becomes the one she must possess, if only to regain control over herself. And so the pursuit begins, not because you chased her, but because you disarmed her power without saying a single word. Nietzsche's final warning: be the abyss, not the dream. We live in a world that tells men to be romantic, to be safe, to be soft. But Nietzsche offers a different path, not because he hated women, but because he understood them. He understood desire as a tension, not a gift, a game of spiritual force, not emotional surrender. The moment you chase, the moment you explain, the moment you try to be enough for her, is the moment you lose your gravitational pull. Because attraction is not about logic. It's not even about compatibility. It's about presence, mystery, inner power, detachment. It's about becoming the man who remains unclaimed. Nietzsche warned, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." So obey yourself. Be the man who doesn't bend for beauty, the man who doesn't offer his heart for approval, the man who walks away without punishment or reward. That man is unforgettable because he doesn't just seduce, he transforms. And she doesn't chase you because you ask her to. She chases you because you became the abyss, the place where her reflection twisted into obsession, the mystery she couldn't solve, the silence she couldn't escape. And in that silence, you win.